Hello! If you're a Scorpio watching this, you're probably already thinking, here we go with another superficial astrological analysis. But let's explore something much deeper about your sign together, not just basic personality traits. We're going to investigate the fascinating psychological phenomenon of why Scorpios experience a unique internal complexity. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel because we're going to share an interesting perspective on Scorpio psychology that could transform your understanding of this sign. First, let's understand the psychological basis. Scorpios develop what we can call multiple layers of personality as a natural adaptation mechanism. This isn't about having trust issues. It's about having developed a sophisticated psychological architecture to navigate the world. Every Scorpio essentially lives in multiple dimensions of their own personality, similar to a psychological thriller where different aspects of the self coexist and converse internally. If you know a Scorpio, try to observe how they naturally adapt to different environments. For Scorpios watching, a useful perspective is to recognize that this multiplicity is not a flaw. It's a sophisticated evolutionary trait. Now, let's explore how this manifests in daily life. Imagine that each zodiac sign is like a house with different rooms. You have your living room personality for guests, your private bedroom self, maybe a messy garage you don't want to show. That's normal, right? But Scorpios operate more like a complex system of underground tunnels with secret passages, hidden rooms, and multiple layers of depth. The fascinating astrological explanation here is that Scorpio is ruled by both Mars and Pluto, creating a unique cosmic dynamic. Mars represents direct, warrior energy, while Pluto governs transformation and the hidden realms. Imagine growing up with two such intense and different planetary influences. You naturally develop multiple facets to process this cosmic complexity. For people in relationships with Scorpios, a useful strategy is to understand that this complexity is genuine, not manipulation. For Scorpios, recognizing this planetary influence can bring self-compassion. So far, we've seen that Scorpios don't just adapt their personality based on who they're with. They literally create entirely different versions of themselves for different situations, each with its own moral codes, goals, and sometimes even different belief systems. It's like method acting turned into a lifestyle. Let's take a practical example. Your Scorpio colleague, who seems super professional and organized, might have a completely different aesthetic at home. Distinct musical tastes, everything different. I'm not just talking about changing clothes. They literally transition into an alternate personality that their professional self wouldn't recognize if they met at a party. If you work with a Scorpio, try to respect these different contexts without forcing artificial consistency. If you are a Scorpio, a useful approach is to accept that you naturally adapt to different environments. This is a strength, not a weakness. Now, the most important part. This phenomenon is not conscious manipulation. Most Scorpios don't plan how to deceive others. This is the brain's natural response to protect them from a world they perceive as fundamentally complex. Each new environment activates their psychological defense system, which automatically creates the perfect camouflage personality for that specific situation. Let's now explore what I call the Scorpio reality operating system, because this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Scorpios don't just live two lives, they inhabit two completely different realities that coexist in the same physical space. First, let's understand reality number one, what I call the superficial Scorpio. This is the version that interacts with the world, goes to work, maintains friendships, and handles basic human functions. The superficial Scorpio is usually functional, can even be charming, and definitely knows how to talk about the weather. But here's the interesting discovery. The superficial Scorpio is essentially programmed by reality number two. If you're talking to a Scorpio, try to notice when there's this subtle shift in energy. For Scorpios, recognizing these two realities can help with self-understanding. Reality number 2 is the shadow Scorpio, where the real person resides. The shadow Scorpio performs constant analysis of every interaction, conversation, and micro-expression witnessed. The shadow Scorpio takes mental notes, makes judgments, and files away information for future reference. The shadow Scorpio sees everything, forgets nothing, and is always 3 steps ahead. The fascinating part? These two realities happen simultaneously. So far, we've seen how these two realities operate. Sometimes the shadow Scorpio decides that the superficial Scorpio is not handling a situation correctly, so it literally takes over in the middle of a conversation. Have you ever been talking to a Scorpio and suddenly felt like you were talking to a completely different person? It's not your imagination. You literally were talking to a different person. For people close to Scorpios, try not to take these transitions personally. For Scorpios watching, a useful strategy is to develop awareness of when these shifts happen. The most intriguing part of this whole psychological process is that most Scorpios genuinely don't realize they're doing it. They think everyone operates this way. They believe everyone has internal strategic meetings before deciding which version of their personality is most appropriate for each situation. Now let's discuss what this really means for your relationships with these beautiful, complex, and fascinating human beings. Once you understand that your Scorpio friend or partner is literally multiple people sharing one body, everything about their behavior starts to make perfect sense. First important point. When a Scorpio says, "I don't know," to any question about feelings or motivations, they aren't being evasive, they're being honest. Because which version of them are you questioning? The superficial Scorpio may genuinely not know, while the shadow Scorpio has a complete psychological analysis ready. If you want to improve your relationship with Scorpios, try asking more specific questions that honor this complexity. For Scorpios, a useful approach is to communicate which version of you is responding. Here is a transformative perspective for relationships. Stop trying to figure out which version is the real one. They are all real. That sweet, vulnerable Scorpio who opened up at 2 a.m., real. That cold, calculating Scorpio who seemed to pull away without explanation, also real. That funny, charming Scorpio who made everyone at the party laugh, equally real. You're not dating or befriending one person. You're in a relationship with an entire psychological ecosystem. For people in relationships with Scorpios, try to celebrate this internal diversity instead of demanding consistency. If you are a Scorpio, a valuable strategy is to communicate your different facets to your partners to build mutual understanding. The beautiful aspect of understanding this is that it actually makes Scorpios much less mysterious and much more human. All that intensity, all those apparent contradictions, all those moments where you felt like they were testing you, they weren't. They were just trying to figure out which version of themselves was safest to share with you at that moment. Now, the most important part that will make you see every Scorpio in your life completely differently. Their biggest fear isn't that you'll discover their secrets, it's that you'll discover all the different aspects of them and decide that none are worth loving. Every time they shift personality around you, they're not trying to manipulate. They're trying to find the version of themselves you will actually stay for. For people loving Scorpios, try to express acceptance of all this complexity. For Scorpios, remember that authentic vulnerability creates deeper connections than performing safe versions of yourselves. So, the next time your Scorpio seems to be 2 different people, remember, they're not being fake. They're being incredibly, almost painfully real. They're just showing you different rooms of the same house, hoping you'll like the architecture enough to want to stay and explore. If you're a Scorpio watching this, stop apologizing for your complexity. The world needs more people who understand that being human is too complicated to fit into just one personality. A final strategy for Scorpios? Practice consciously integrating your different facets, creating greater internal harmony. Like the video if this completely changed how you see the Scorpios in your life. And subscribe because we're just getting started exploring the fascinating psychological aspects of the Zodiac. Each sign has its own unique cosmic complexities, and we're here for the whole journey of discovery.